Hey everyone, Usman here, back with another video. I am going to be doing a ranking of the Spider-Man movies that have been released by Sony, and I guess even Marvel as well, with the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. This list is going to mainly consist of like the live-action Spider-Man movies, not like, I'm not including Into the Spider-Verse because that's animated. So it's only strictly going to be live-action Spider-Man movies that I've seen. I think in total there's like about 8 of them. So I'm going to just include all of those, like the rankings and everything like that. So just going to give you just like my overall thoughts and my ranking, and hope that you guys like it. I'm going to rank it from best to worst, which one I like the most, and then which one I like the least. That's what it's going to be like. I mean, I know with other lists that I made, like, my top 10 lists, I've usually was like, okay, this is my least favorite to my favorite, but this one is going to be best to worst. So that's kind of what I'm setting out to make for this whole video. So before I start talking about which Spider-Man movies are my favorite to least favorite, don't forget to leave a like on this video, anything else like that, as well as don't forget to subscribe as well. Just, subscribe so that way you could stay up to date with the latest content that I post on this channel and everything else that will come soon. My number one is Marvel Studios' Spider-Man No Way Home. If you haven't seen my review already for Spider-Man No Way Home, I just posted it not that long ago. It is a movie I think I wrote down in like the thumbnail for my video, where it's like the best movie ever. Granted, that's a bit, or if not like a very much an exaggeration. I think the movie is really, really just great. I think it's the best of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies in the MCU, best MCU Spider-Man movie. I also think it's probably like, my favorite Spider-Man movie, because yes, it brings back all the sort of nostalgic elements and stuff like that from the other previous Spider-Man movies and combines it into this one big film, tying it with the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies to the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies, and then just like brings it into the MCU and makes it come together all cohesively. The acting from the actors who previously played them, like I mentioned, Doc Ock with Alfred Molina, Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin, those guys, primarily those two are the best. The others are also great as well, with Jamie Foxx and Electro. Like, I like those guys as well, but those two specifically, when I think those guys stand out. I think the acting from Tom Holland is better in this film. The way that they sort of approach the whole thing with, responsibility, that whole thing, it's great. The action was still phenomenal in this film. The score, I don't think I mentioned this in my previous review, like the score I think is one of the best ones. Brings back some like old the themes and stuff like that from the other movies, from the other old Spider-Man films and everything, so that's just what it is. I mean, yes, it could be known as a fan service movie, but it just delivered on every facet. Costumes, I guess, were great, for Spider-Man, and it makes me want to rewatch the movie like more and more and more and more, so that's why I say I guess this is my favorite Spider-Man movie, I guess, out of the bunch. So that's like my number one. Just go ahead and watch Spider-Man No Way Home. And yes, fine, spoiler thing, I think I mentioned it already. Yes, Tobey and Andrew, yes, they're in it. Phenomenal. Love seeing them come back. Part of the nostalgia specifically. You can't stop thinking about it, and even sort of the dialogue between all three different versions of Spider-Man. So that's just what makes it stand out the most as my number one favorite Spider-Man movie of all time. Probably one of my favorite comic book movies. And the best comic book movie that came out this year for me, personally. Coming in at number 2 is Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2. This came out, I think, in 2004. It has, yes, Alfred Molina as Doc Ock. His interpretation of Doc Ock is still great. Very menacing. Not too overly campy or anything like that. No, he's just very menacing, just the way he delivers the lines. The scenes in that movie, there was a scene in the film where he's like in the hospital and he's like attacking all those doctors, basically killing them, which is so brutal. Back then when I saw it, it was so scary. When I see it now, I'm just like, it's very much like an but it's not as bad as it is when you're older now. It's a crazy scene. Yeah, the performance is obviously showing more Peter Parker being vulnerable, just living his normal life, dealing with him being Spider-Man and sort of being through a bunch of different things as the character. Tobey still brings that gravitas to the role. The lines, I guess, in the movie are quotable, and I remember basically every line from that film. Again, like, even the score as well, like, was it Danny Elfman or something who did the score for the Spider-Man movies? Like, he just did it. The Doc Ock's theme specifically, like, it's incorporated into No Way Home, and which is amazing. But yeah, Doc Ock's theme I think is one of my favorite ones in there. Great. And dealing, I guess, with basically what if Spider-Man lost his powers, stuff like that. It is kind of dated with the CGI, but I still think that the action CGI, all that kind of stuff, is still works to this day and still delivers in every way possible. It's like my favorite Spider-Man movie that I own on DVD. So great film. I don't know what else I can say about it besides that. Spider-Man 2, definitely give it a watch. Great movies. That's my number 2. Definitely captured everything well. Coming in at number 3 is Spider-Man from 2002. Yes, another Tobey Maguire movie. First ever Spider-Man movie and comic book movie I think I ever saw that got me into superheroes and comic books in the first place. Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. Very iconic. very much a campy sort of iteration, but he's still very scary. There was a scene in the movie that I also saw that was young when I was younger, where he's going through the experiment and everything. He's kind of like in a seizure and everything like that after going through the experiment. And the doctor comes in and he's like, Norman, and he grabs the guy because he's consumed by the goblin formula, the goblin persona, and he's like, back to formula. It just throws him. Very much quotable lines, like I said. The Scientist to Myself, that thing. I still don't understand why it's that popular. Great origin for the character. Very much a great performance by Toby still. The use of his webbing, great. It's not from his web shooters, but still, it's like very effective and very unique. So it's something I like, and I think they incorporated it into the comics. J. Jonah Jameson, the introduction with him. J.K. Simmons still knows how to play the character really well. Even in the newer movies as well, like he still delivers the performances. That's why he's definitive. That's why they brought him back for No Way Home and Far From Home and all those other movies that came out for Spider-Man. My favorite fight in this movie probably would have to be, I mean, obviously the one they had at the parade was pretty iconic, but I think even the one at the end was very much brutal and delivered it. Very great movie. Spider-Man 2002. Okay, so my next movie is Spider-Man Homecoming. That's my number 4. First MCU Spider-Man movie. Delivers very well in that whole thing. A lot of people, even after that movie came out, complained that, he was too much of a Iron Boy Jr. or whatever. He was just whatever. But honestly, I don't really think I minded that as much because I think in the comic books they kind of introduced the whole thing where he works with Stark and Stark built a suit with him. There's camaraderie between them and all that kind of stuff. There's sort of father figure type of stuff. In other comic books, I know people like traditional Spider-Man. I like that as well. I very much am into that. But I just think that this movie is like definitely a great film though. Spider-Man Homecoming. Vulture's great antagonist. Was it Michael Keaton or something? He played him. Even he kind of had menacing moments in the film. His costume was cool. It wasn't like some weird sort of bird costume like in the comic books, like in the old 60s comics or whatever. They actually made him like legit super cool in the movie. The score, even this new score that they had with Homecoming, I think it's like my second favorite Spider-Man score that they've had in the movies. I love the use of the technology and everything that he uses. I mean, again, people will complain about that, but Spider-Man, he has tech anyways, and he uses it, and it's cool. Tom Holland, the actor, great performance as Spider-Man, just playing more of a youthful type of Spider-Man, not someone who is super mature and adult type, which is very much a new sort of take on the character, based off, I think, the Ultimate Comics or something, has that energy, that youthful energy that you get to see him through those movies and how he wants to be an Avenger and all that stuff. Sure, there's no Uncle Ben story, but they did something different, as I mentioned earlier. I really enjoyed it, and I like how they incorporated other characters like, Shocker and the Tinkerer, made them part of, like, other very much lesser known Spider-Man villains, or, well, not much lesser known, they're very much like minor Spider-Man villains, and made them threats in that film as well. So I really liked how they did that, and I hope we get to see them more. A Scorpion, Mac Gargan, was teased in the movie to go after Spider-Man. I wanted to see him again in like another Spider-Man movie, but we got No Way Home, but no complaints here. Hopefully we get to see him again in the future, showing him that he didn't need to have the suit in order to be who he was, and just great film overall. Coming in at 5 is Spider-Man Far From Home. Far From Home was a film that I kind of liked as well. Mysterio primarily was amazing in the film. I very much liked Jake Gyllenhaal's performance as the character. He played it very psychotic with the role of Quentin Beck. He delivered it in every way that he could. He played the character really well. I mean, there was that one scene in the movie, I think, where he was basically just doing like his evil master plan type of thing. Some people will probably be like, oh, cringing at that's like why they have to do that in that kind of movie or something. But I just thought it was kind of like kind of cool that he just presented his plan like that. It's like, and everyone will listen to Mysterio. I don't know, it didn't bother me as much. I actually kind of liked that. It brought me into like the old-fashioned type of way that they did that kind of stuff with the old-fashioned supervillain explaining antics where they explain their evil plan. I like that actually quite a bit. Yeah, I liked how the movie take place in other sort of areas. I guess, yeah, more tech-based stuff, but doesn't bother me that much again. Even though I think they doubled down with it, but still, it was still something that he still used and he was still into and he still was able to go through. So, but I guess, he's alone again, regardless of the suits. No Stark with him, he died. Nick Fury was there and everything, but they didn't really help as much. But he still did everything on his own. The Skrulls being, sort of being the replacement for Nick Fury and Maria Hill were cool. The scenes with Mysterio, like him fighting him and everything like that were cool. And I like how it was just like, he was just like a kind of like, the way that he was showing it was that he was, considering it's an illusion tech type of thing, there were projectors, there was a motion capture suit he was wearing, and he was like fighting Spider-Man. There were drones, and Spider-Man was trying to get away from that, and they trusted Beck, and they were both friends, and that was kind of a cool dynamic between the two. And Peter trying to balance the whole thing where he's like, okay, how am I going to enjoy myself on a vacation? Just be in a different area, be somewhere that's not New York. That's something that we never really saw in the other Spider-Man movie, so that was kind of a different sort of look at it. I like the film quite a bit, actually. Number 6 is Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 is not the best movie. It's not the best Spider-Man movie. It's not the best Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie in the trilogy. I think Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 1, and then Spider-Man 3 are like my rankings of it. And I think almost everybody would agree, I think. But I still thought Spider-Man 3 was entertaining. I still think that Tobey Maguire, he did good with that. Explored more of the characters' dynamics. Of course, they did retcon or whatever, sort of changed what happened with Uncle Ben and his death. And so that was kind of like a major change that not a lot of people really liked. I still kind of find it to be weird, but whatever. It's not like bothersome that much. They did it. Incorporated the Sandman. Sandman was an okay villain. Not very as memorable, but I liked the fight scenes with him and stuff and how Spider-Man struggled. Black suit stuff, the fight scenes with that were great. Him being emo and stuff, that was really stupid, but meme-worthy. The stuff with Harry, it's just comical. And it still had the cool score. The score was also the thing that brought it up. Eddie Brock, I didn't mind his performance so much. It still followed like the roots of the comic books. Granted, he wasn't some muscle-bound guy like he is in the comic books, but either way, he was still a guy that hated Peter Parker. It does have its problems, but I still think it's like a decent film. It's a good movie, in my opinion. Not the best Spider-Man movie. I still think it's better than the other two I will mention that are like down at the bottom for me in terms of quality. It's a good enough, Spider-Man movie, very entertaining, has the action, just sort of a little bit of the emotion. With the whole New Goblin stuff with Harry, it's The New Goblin, he didn't even look like a goblin, he had the goblin formula. And they just called him the New Goblin, and he just looked like, a skateboarder or like a snowboarder type of guy. But Willem Dafoe was back in that, so that was cool. Coming in at my number 7 is The Amazing Spider-Man. I said originally that Andrew Garfield is like my least favorite Spider-Man. He still is. I like The Amazing Spider-Man. Didn't love it. Yeah, I thought his performance was good. Not the best, like I said, compared to the other two. But I still think he tried his best. I still think he was fine. I thought, he was kind of a little too cool for Peter Parker. Blizzard was kind of like a character that was kind of like a little weak, I guess. He wanted to turn everybody into lizards and stuff. And it was interesting that they showed like, Peter's parents in these movies, because we never saw Peter's parents and stuff like that, even though they died. He was raised by his aunt and uncle, but still, it was cool to see that dynamic. It was basically just like a retelling of the origin from the 2002 Spider-Man, just not as good, but it wasn't terrible. They tried as best as they can to do something different with it. He was more comedic Spider-Man, just like how Tom Holland's was, which I appreciated. I think he was better as Spider-Man with the comedic sense, like everybody else said, as opposed to just being the Peter Parker that people are used to, which I like the comedic Spider-Man scenes, even though I wasn't laughing, but I was like, that's part of the character of Spider-Man when he's in the costume. Some of the fight scenes were not bad. The lizard one at the end was pretty crazy. The lizard design was kind of weird. I wish they gave him like the lab coat and they just made him look a little bit more like a lizard. Even in Spider-Man No Way Home, like with the way that the lizard looked, he still kind of looked strange. But I think the guy who played him was a Rhys Ifans or something, who played the lizard. He did as good as he could in the role of Kirk Connors. All I could say about this kind of stuff is like, they tried. It's not as good as the other ones on the list. It's good enough to me that I can sort of go back and appreciate what they've done. Coming in at my number 1 is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I rewatched it sort of recently to prepare for Spider-Man No Way Home. I rewatched the MCU Tom Holland movies, and then I also saw this movie as well, just to sort of like reacquaint myself with like how this was. It's a very interesting film, but like not in a really good way. I think Electro, the way that Jamie Foxx did it, I think he did a decent job playing Electro, like in terms of like decent as in like he acted. Yeah, he was good at acting that role, specifically when he was playing that role. I just don't think his character was well written, playing like, oh, I'm the loser, I look weird and everything like that. Nobody likes me. Yeah, those kinds of characters are in a lot of comic book movies nowadays. So I think that was not as well written. I still think Jamie Foxx delivered. The design for Electro, I know a lot of people probably were like, that looks weird. I think in one of the other comic book sort of iterations of Electro, he kind of looked like that anyways. Like he was like blue. Because we're used to like the original OG like Electro uniform where like he has it in Spider-Man No Way Home where he's like showing that. They show those elements of it. But I don't know. I like his design, his costume. I think he was actually kind of cool in that. But I get people complaining. But I just thought it was kind of cool. Concerning Peter's parents, that was sort of interesting. I mean, it was just kind of whatever to me. But like Rhino was kind of just whatever. Paul Giamatti or something. He played Rhino. Yeah, not really well utilized, but whatever. They just wanted to be like, here's another Spider-Man villain. So I don't know, but the costume was pretty cool. Didn't mind the costume. The Green Goblin was a Dane DeHaan or something who played Green Goblin in that, Harry Osborn. His Green Goblin was terrible. It wasn't great. I thought he did fine as Harry, and some bits of the score were kind of not memorable either. Maybe Electro's theme, but for the most part, no. But yeah, not exactly. I mean, it's a good film, I guess. It's good, but not great. That's how I feel about that. It's my least favorite Spider-Man movie, not that great, but whatever. They tried. I just think it didn't have that much of the energy as compared to the other ones, but whatever. That's just how I think. So if I had to go back to, best to worst, my ranking, just to recap, would be No Way Home, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man, Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home, Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man, and Amazing Spider-Man 2. So that's how I would rank it. You can let me know down below in the comments, what do you think? Do you have a different ranking than I do? Do you like any of the MCU Spider-Man movies or something? Did you not like those parts of it? Like, did you like any of these Spider-Man movies? Did you not like it? Who was your favorite Spider-Man? All that kind of stuff, you can let me know down below. I just thought this would be a timely video because of Spider-Man No Way Home being out, so I was like, why not? And there's more content coming your way soon. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.